In today's presentation, we are covering turf weeds or weeds which grow within a turf surface. This can be anywhere from the sports pitches, within the stadiums, the golf courses, the amenity lawns, and home lawns. So, first of all, what actually are weeds? So, the definition of a weed is any plant which is growing in a place where it's basically not wanted. So, weeds are plants that grow where they're not wanted or where they negatively impact the desired vegetation. So, for our instance, it would be the sports turf. They are often characterized by their rapid growth, their resilience, and their ability to thrive in adverse conditions. Weeds can be native or non-native, and they can be a royal pain in our sports turf surfaces, typically in sort of shaded areas or areas where the grass might not be the most prominent. That's the time for weeds to take over, and then particularly in places where we have weeded areas in close proximity, or farmers' fields nearby, or hedgerows. Those are pretty much breeding grounds for weeds, and those seed heads then transfer onto our sports pitches. So the importance of identifying and managing weeds. Identifying weeds is crucial for the effective weed management. It allows turf managers to distinguish between desirable grasses and unwanted plants. Managing weeds is vital to maintain the plant's health, the appearance and functionality of the sports turf. Without proper identification and management, weeds can quickly overrun turfed areas and reduce the quality and playability of the surfaces. And that's probably the main one there at the end. Apart from the appearance, playing on a surface there on the bottom right, for example, covered in weeds, it's not going to play as well as grass. The ball's not going to roll as well. The soil might be more compact because of how the root structure is. And it's just ultimately not going to be as good as playing on a turf surface, which is nice and uniform. So the impact on turf health and aesthetics. Weeds compete with the desirable turf grass for essential resources. So these resources are things such as water, nutrients, and sunlight. This competition can then weaken the turf. Weeds disrupt the uniformity and aesthetics of the sports turf, affecting the visual appeal. Weeds can create an uneven playing surface, making the sports fields less safe and enjoyable for the athletes. So you can see there on the top right, we've got an amenity lawn that was recently scarified after having the weed spray applied to it as well. And you can sort of see a few bare areas and a few brown areas where the grass has been negatively impacted on that weed content. There is still parts of power in there. You can see sort of lighter green dots within the middle as well. So there's obviously more work to be had. Where you can see on the bottom here on this baseball field, there's a lot more uniformity. Whereas you can see here on the bottom on this base field, the grass content is a lot more uniform. There's a lot less weeds, and we can sort of see that in the striped up nature of the sports turf. It looks really nice. So by understanding what weeds are and their impact on the turf health and the aesthetics, sports turf managers can take the proactive measures to address control weed infestations. So we have 12 weeds here today, and the first one we have is a daisy. Its Latin name is Balis perennius. Its characteristics are that it has small white or pink flowers with a yellow center. They're low growing and often form dense patches. So you can see there on the right, there's quite a lot of them in the picture. We have a dandelion that most of you are probably familiar with. Big tap roots, big yellow leaves, and also produces those fluffy seed heads that we're all familiar with. Has the sort of white sappy interior as well if you ever break the plant open. And the Latin name of this is Taraxium officiale. Next, we have springy turf moss. This is a really long name to pronounce in Latin, but it is Rhytaldion fus squarosus. The characteristics of this turf moss are non-vascular plants, so they typically tend to be green, low-growing, and form dense mats deep within the turf, just under the crown. You can usually spot this from a mile away because the surface of the turf will be really spongy, and you'll still have quite a coverage of the surface from a distance, but when you get up close, you'll actually see you only have one or two grass plants in that area, and eventually the moss will take over. Procumbent pearlwort. The Latin name here is Serginium procumbens. The characteristics here, they have tiny star-like white flowers with creeping stems. They form low and dense carpets of foliage which grow laterally. The white clover, which most of you should be familiar with, this is the Trifolium repens. The main characteristics here are the trifoliate leaves, white or pink ball-like flower heads, and the creeping growth habits. So you have the greater plantain. This is a broadleaf plantain. It's pronounced in Latin as the plantago major. Its main characteristics are those broad oval leaves with ribbed veins and tall spikes of tiny greenish flowers. The ribwort plantain is a narrow-leaved plantain, which is known in Latin as the Plantago lanceolata. Its main characteristics are those long, narrow leaves with petal veins and that slender spike of small flowers, as you can see on the right. Knotgrass, another quite common weed in the UK, and it's known by its Latin name as Bolingonum ovicular. Its main characteristics are those wiry stems with small greenish pink flowers and the alternative leaves on each side. The creeping buttercup, also known as Ranunculus repens. Its main characteristics, as most people might know, are those glossy yellow flowers that are deeply lobed. Kidney-shaped leaves with creeping stems. They cover quite a large area as well once they're grown to an adult size. Creeping cinquefoil, also known as Potentilla reptans. It's known for its low growing characteristics with palmate leaves and small yellow 5-petal flowers. It's also quite easily distinguished. So you see on the bottom right picture there, I also recognize it as like a small sort of strawberry plant, but obviously with the different leaves and the yellow flowers. That's how I sort of differentiate it between buttercups. The slender speedwell, which is one that also comes up quite often, which people forget about and don't realize what it actually is. This is also known as Veronica filiformis. Its main characteristics are its low growing with slender stems and small blue flowers, and its opposite leaves similar to the knotgrass.